I'm Lisa with OESD, and I'm so glad that you are joining me today in doing a tiling scene. I love doing OESD tiling scenes, and today we're actually going to do The Sea of Tranquility by Thomas Kinkade. That is our latest tiling scene, and I love it. It's got dramatic skies, and it could be the Midwest, or it could actually be either of the coasts with the ocean. I just absolutely love this tiling scene. Let's talk about the supplies that we are going to need today in order to make it. First and foremost, the first thing you'll notice right here is that I have the instructions. Without the instructions, I would be completely lost. So I'm glad to have those printed out and ready to go. I also have an expert point and press tool. That's going to help me open up my seams when I get to that point. I have a pencil. I have a fresh pack of 7511 needles. I have the button clips, and this is actually going to help me facilitate the construction of our tiles. It's so necessary, so small, but so important. I have 505 temporary adhesive spray. I have fusible woven. Fusible woven is what's going to give our fabric just that little extra support for all those stitches we're going to put on top of it, as well as heavyweight stabilizer. A quick thing about the heavyweight stabilizer. When you're doing a tiling scene, such as a Thomas Kinkade, you are going to want to support or use a stabilizer that's going to support the densest tile in the tiling scene. So even though there might be some tiles that are lightly digitized and have less stitches, I'm always going to go ahead and I'm going to hoop the stabilizer for the densest tile of the complete entire tiling scene. And in this case, that happens to be over here where the lighthouse and the trees are, the rocks. So I'm using 2 layers of heavyweight, and I'm also going to use my perfect press cloth. And I can't hoop without my grippy grid because my hoop is going to slide all over the place if I don't. The other thing that I'm going to use that I don't have showing right now is I'm going to need a ruler, a rotary cutter, and a cutting mat. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to clear all of this away so that we can get started. The first thing I want to talk about is fusible woven, which I've cut my fabric here. We're going to do a process called chain hooping. So here is my strip of fabric, and I want to tell you that what I did is that I cut my fabric 15 inches wide for 2 reasons. One is that my fusible woven is 15 inches wide. And so when I go to fuse these on, I'm not wasting anything. And the reason why we're going to chain hoop is because it will actually help me economize my fabric and my fusible woven. If I cut them individually, which you can, and I certainly did when I was first starting out doing my first couple of tiling scenes, you can do that, but then you might get a little frustrated with how much fabric you are using. So I really like chain hooping for economizing that. Here is my fabric, and again, it's 15 inches wide because of the size of my hoop. I know that I want it 15 inches wide, and I can have a hoop right here so I can give you a demonstration. I have a hoop right here, so let me show you. That 15 inches wide, when I go along and do my hooping, that's the perfect width. And you can use steam for those of us that like a bit of steam, or we're a steam jockey. By all means, use steam on that fusible woven. It is perfectly acceptable to do. Okay, now my fabric is ready. I need to go ahead and put away the iron. Okay, I have my fabric prepped with fusible woven. I have my hoop, and I'm going to put the bottom of my hoop right here on the grippy grid. Here are my 2 layers of heavyweight tearaway, and again, I am stabilizing for the densest tile in the entire tiling scene. So this first tile is the sky, and it's not as dense as some of the other tiles, but again, I'm just reiterating that I am going to do this for the densest possible tile. Actually, what I really like to do is take my 2 layers here, kind of come underneath here, and I want you to notice really quick the orientation of my hoop right here. This is actually what I don't want to do. In this case, I want to chain hoop, which means that I want to have the flow of the fabric going off the arm of the embroidery machine. So in this case, off of this way here. The reason why I'm going to do that is I'm going to do tile, 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 tile in a chain, hence the name chain hooping. So it's a series and it's going to help me economize on fabric. But if I do it this way, it actually won't. And I have an oopsie that I'll show you in just a moment. So what I'm going to do is, even though the tile is like this, I want to think about the fact that my fabric is going to be going off that embroidery arm. So I'm going to loosen up my hoop right here. Now, make sure my arrows are lined up, and I'm going to go ahead and take this whole thing right over to here, and now I'm going to go ahead and get it pressed in. There we go. All right. This hoop is now ready to be embroidered. So I'm going to bring it over to the embroidery machine. Make sure your fabric is now over the left side, away from the arm of the embroidery unit, just like that. Okay, so I've actually done the first tile the incorrect hooping way on purpose, because I wanted to highlight why we hoop the way that we do in chain hooping. This one is a width of fabric that I cut 10 inches as opposed to 15 inches, so that the orientation of my hoop was sort of in this vertical or maybe like a profile as opposed to landscape orientation. And what happens is, as I go along, there just isn't enough space for me to do a lot of tiles. That's not really economizing. So by switching the orientation to more of a landscape, then I can get more tiles done across the length of the fabric that I have cut. So that's why we do it that way. This, even though it is the wrong orientation for hooping, this is still a good tile, and I'm going to use this because I just remembered something else that's critical when doing a tiling scene, and that is your very last stitch. It's called the seam stitch line. So on this tile right here, I'm going to show you right on the inside line right here, there is a line that is just a tiny bit in from the edge of the overall design. That is called feathering. And we do that so that when we put our tiles together, when we're stitching them together, having that feathering out into the seam allows the tiles to come together more seamlessly, so that when you're looking at it, you're not going to say to yourself, there's a seam, there's a seam, there's a seam. All you do is look at a beautiful, picturesque scene altogether. So I want to point out that this is called the seam stitch line, and it's going to be just on the inside. The other thing that is critical in allowing for these tiles to go together, and there'll be more about this as we stitch them with each other, is that you want to use a contrasting bobbin. In this case, I've used like a green color that you can see. And what I love about doing this is any of the extra bobbins that you have lying around, you filled it up, but you only used a little bit of it. This is a great way to use up those extra bobbins that you have with thread. So you want to have a contrasting color. Had I chosen white, the white would have blended in with the stabilizers, with the back of the fabric, with the bobbin color, and I would not know where that seam stitch line is. And we need to know that seam stitch line for a couple of reasons. One, for putting those tiles together, but also it is our guide for where to trim the individual tiles when we will eventually make our blocks. Now, the other thing that's really important is that we're going to label what tile this is. And I know that this is tile number 1. So I'm going to take my pencil and I'm just going to mark 1 here. Where you mark matters. I could write it right here on the tile. I personally don't like doing that, but you can. I like doing it sort of on the side so I know where it's at. And because I'm going to have a 1/2 inch seam allowance, I want to make sure that I'm not writing it over here, because if I wrote it right there, when I go to trim my tiles, I will have just cut the number off. So you want to make sure you put your number as close to as you can, and you can use a pencil, you can use a pen, you just want to make sure there's no bleed through. So that is tile number 1. I went ahead and did tile 2 through 6 right here, and I want to talk a little bit about trimming our tiles. Right here, you're going to see that I have the full cut of the stabilizer. But I trimmed my stabilizers as I was going along. So what I would do is I would do one tile and then rough cut the stabilizer away, giving myself a good inch. I didn't want to cut it too close because I need a 1/2 inch seam allowance, but I also wanted to trim it up so that it wouldn't interfere when I went to go and hoop the next tile. So this tile, then I unhooped, rough cut trimmed, then I would hoop this one, stitch it out, changing my bobbin for that seam stitch line, and then rough cut trimmed, and I did this whole process all the way through, and this is the last tile here. So I'm going to go ahead and pop that out, and I'm just going to show what I'm talking about by rough cutting. I'm just going to take my scissors that I have designated for paper stabilizer, and I'm just roughly cutting that away, keeping well outside that 1/2 inch seam allowance so that it's just not in the way. Makes it a little easier, I think, to deal with the whole strip of, or the whole chain of tiles. And you don't have to worry about being perfect. All right, the next thing that I'm going to do is properly trim my tiles. And what I want to make sure that I do more than anything else is get this grippy grid out of the way, because I don't want to cut my grippy grid. Okay, so now I have a whole chain of tiles that need to be trimmed up into individual tiles. Luckily for me, my seam stitch line is this green color, so I'm actually going to take my ruler and my 1/2 inch line, which on this ruler happens to also be green, and I'm going to line them up, make sure I'm completely on the cutting mat, take my rotary cutter, and I'm just going to go ahead and cut that off. So now I'm just going to go ahead and keep trimming all the way through. Whew. So now that we've got everything all trimmed up, it's time to press all of our blocks. So I'm going to clean all this up and bring up my ironing board and my perfect press cloth. What is great about the perfect press cloth is that it allows the stitches to go into that without smushing the stitches and flattening them. I love the perfect press cloth for ironing out or pressing my finished tiles. So go ahead and just give your tiles a good press, making sure that you're in that perfect press cloth so we're not flattening the stitches. And now would be a really good time to make sure that you have remembered to write down the numbers. Because the next phase that we're going to do is we're going to lay out all of our tiles. It would also be a good time right now to switch your machine over from the embroidery side to the sewing side. So, might I recommend, one of the things that I was noticing when I was getting my tiles together is not only did I label it with a number, but you may want to also label it, especially with these sky tiles, right side up. Because when you put the clouds together, you want to make sure it looks like the clouds are going together really nicely. On some of these tiling scenes, I find it really helpful. I'm going to grab my pencil, and looking at the schematic, looking at these tiles, I'm also going to do a this way, right side up. That way, when I go to put my tiles together, I know which way is the top and which way is the bottom. Some of them with buildings, it's a little bit more obvious. I wouldn't put the lighthouse towards the ground, but on some of these sky ones, or if you have other tiling scenes with background, a direction might be more helpful. 1, 2, and I'm just going to do the first half right now. which means in 32 tiles, it'll be the first 16. And I'm just looking at it, making sure that it makes sense, that I don't have a tile in the wrong direction. So that looks good. I'm ready to sew. I have my sewing machine set up. I have my tiles. I know what I'm going to do next. In the past, we have said you would sew 1 to 2, and you would sew 3 and 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then you would make them into, units where you'd go 1, 2, 3, 4, sewn to 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But at OESD, one of the things that I really like is we're always looking at how we do things and we reevaluate. So what I'm going to do is a little bit different today. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stack up these tiles right here, keeping in mind what my order is. I'm going to set them here. And I'm going to go all the way down, so I'm leaving a 4 patch over here, and I'm going to scooch these over. So I have row 1 up here and row 2 here. Now what I have is 1 and 2 and 9 and 10. And I'm going to stitch 1 to 2, and then I'm going to stitch 9 to 10. And that will give me a set of 2 tiles, a set of 2 tiles. Then I'm going to sew all 4 of these together, and that will give me my first block. So I'm going to sew 4 tiles to create a block. The first one I'm going to do is 1 to 2. So I'm setting this aside. I'm going to bring this down, and then I'm going to get my favorite thing, button clips. One of my favorite things. There are many things. I'm grabbing 3 of the OESD button clips. When I put my tiles together, I want to make sure that they're not going to slip and slide. And so why I've chosen button clips is that there are little teethies that will grab my fabric and grab the stabilizer, the whole kit and caboodle, and they won't slide around. And then I have a misalignment problem when I go to sew my tiles together. So I only need 3, and I'm going to do 3. I'm going to do 1 at the top, 1 in the middle, and 1 at the bottom. And I'm going to go ahead and go sew these. Before I start sewing, I want to talk to you about where I'm going to be sewing. And that is going to be just inside this seam stitch line. You can see that I have that seam stitch line in green. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to come over here a little ways away, engage my foot down, but not sewing. And I want to make sure that I'm right on that line. And on this machine, I know that I can move this needle just a skosh to the other side so that I'm going just inside that seam stitch line. If I were sewing right on the line, I would see the seams. Okay, before we continue sewing our 4 patch together, I've only sewn 1 to 2 and 9 to 10. The next thing that we do is we're going to press, and this is where we're going to use our Expert Point and Press tool. It is so handy. It's actually a great stiletto on this end, and on this end, which has a slightly larger bulb to it, it is really great for opening up our seams and not burning our fingers. I'm grabbing tile 1 to 2. It's a little stiff. So I'm going to go ahead with my fingers and kind of open it up. You'll notice that you haven't seen me tear away any of the stabilizer. So all those layers are in here, and I actually don't want to tear out the stabilizer yet. There will be a time when I can tear it out from the seam allowance, but I'm not tearing it out from behind all these stitches. That would be really time consuming, and that means that your tiling seam, if you were to rip out the stabilizer, you could get some warping, and it would be really hard to get all of your tiles to align and have all the corners meet up where they're supposed to meet up. Ask me how I know on that one. So the first thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to start here and nestle that in there, Then I'm going to come around with my iron, and it's okay to use steam. We're just going to give this guy a good pressing. We want it nice and flat. So that is 1 to 2, and I think I did pretty good. My clouds don't look too disjointed. So that's great. Now I'm going to go ahead and press 9 and 10. Yep, my clouds are meeting up. My trees are meeting up. I'm going to go ahead and put this down. So now I have 1 and 2, and I'm going to look at my arrow right here, so I know that that's right side up. So now I have 1, 2, 9, and 10, and I'm going to sew these 2 to make a 4-block unit, or a 4-tile unit, or 1-block unit. Here is our 4 patch. We went ahead, we sewed 1 to 2, we sewed 9 to 10, and then we sewed this unit to this unit, creating a 4-tile block. The next process would be, we're going to set this aside. You'll notice again that I still haven't taken out the stabilizers. What I like to do, and this is me, is after I've actually gotten everything all sewn together, I'm just going to go ahead and take out the stabilizer just from inside the seam allowance. This is where I'm going to actually put on a good album that I really like. And yep, you're going to go through and you're going to rip, 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 rip for every seam, but I don't like to do it until everything is all together. In case I have to do anything, it just helps everything stay all together should the dreaded seam ripper have to come out. So here's 1, 2, 9, 10, set that aside. Then the next one I know is going to be 3, 4, and 8 and 7. So I'm going to go here, I'm going to look at it, check to see if I have it right side up, refer to my guide if I need to, and you can see right here, this is 1 and 2, 9 and 10 that we just sewed together. So you are just going this unit, and then this unit, this unit, this unit, sew all those together. That's the first half. Then 17 through 32 is the bottom half of this quilt. And when you're done with all of that, let me show you what you have. You will have this beautiful tiling scene. Speaking of quilt, you want to know how to quilt it. So when you are ready and you have all of the tiles all sewn together, you're going to cut your backing fabric and your batting slightly larger than the top. And I'm a cautious quilter, so I usually do so that I have a good 2 inches at least, all the way around the whole entire quilt. So 2 inches here, here, and here. Then when I quilt it, and what we recommend, because it's so beautiful, you really don't want to have any of the stitches in all the beautiful work that the digitizers have done and Thomas Kincaid originally. So in this instance, what I highly, highly recommend is that you are going to do a stitch in the ditch. And then you're going to bind it like you like to. So your preferred binding style. I really love, this might be my actual favorite, and I say that every single time, but I think this is my favorite Thomas Kincaid tiling scene. The lighthouse, the cabins, the moody, dramatic sky, the sailboat. I think the sailboat might be one of my favorites, and that's actually going to lead me into some inspiration and some other things. What can you do with the tiling scene? So I have over here, this same sailboat right here is actually in a frame. And I love how that looks. So you could have a wonderful seamless decor. You could have this hanging up on the wall or displayed how you would like to display it, maybe under glass. Or maybe you just want to do one little section or have a whole room with different parts of the tiling scene and create a nice ambiance or a nursery even. There are so many different things that you can do with the tiling scene, and you don't have to stitch out the whole thing. You can stitch out parts of it. This is a wonderful pillow that was made, and it's our Hawaiian quilting tiling scene. It's just one of the tiles. And I really like this. And we like the idea of doing a pillow. And one of our other colleagues took the Spring Hummingbirds by Donna Gelsinger, and she just turned it into a pillow that she just did an envelope back. So you could slip a pillow right inside of this. So you don't have to stitch out the entire tiling scene. You can just do this as a portion. Maybe what you want to do with this is a garden flag. You can do anything you want because, of course, you are the creator of your own creation, the artist of your own creation. Here are some other ones that we have. Right here, these are some really fun placemats. We have our orange peel expressions. This is just 2 of those tiles to create a placemat. This one is modern petals. So we have 2 of those done right here. And then this is just a beautiful spring placemat. I love that. And then this one is from a 3rd tiling scene that we have, which is called Modern Expressions. And we just took 2 of the tiles and put them into a placemat. Actually, our colleague Rachel did. Fabulous job. But maybe you want to see what it would look like as a quilt. So we have over here, taking that modern petals and breaking it up into a beautiful quilt. And she just broke up the tiling scene, changed the orientation to kind of give it a drunkard's path look with some sashing. What a gorgeous, gorgeous way to look at a tiling scene in a totally different way. I love that too. So there are so many different things that you can do with tiling scenes. You don't have to just do it as a single thing. I think my favorite right now, I'm going to pull this back out because of course I love this Thomas Kincaid. So pretty. Did you see the sun here with the dappled light on the water? Oh, one of my favorite things. I love that OESD has thread kits, that we have thread kits for most of our tiling scenes. If we use stash thread, it will not look quite right and you won't be able to replicate the look that you've fallen in love with. So I definitely recommend getting a thread kit. To recap really quickly, you'll remember that we made sure that our fabric was cut 15 inches wide, and we do that for chain hooping to economize on fabric. 15 inches wide happens to be the roll that you can get with fusible woven, so it's really easy to get your fusible woven, your fabric, put that on the back, and then you are all set. Make sure it is in landscape, not portrait. When you put it into the hoop, you want that fabric trailing off there. You want to make sure that you have a contrasting bobbin for your seam stitch line. That's the last stitch. That's going to enable you to not only trim your blocks or your tiles properly, but sew your 4-patch block together that we did at the end there. I think that's about it for me today. Make sure you are staying tuned for special deals, and please be sure to like and subscribe this YouTube video so you get more of our OESD content into your YouTube feed. And we have the Perfect Stitch, which is a great place to go for inspiration. I love seeing what you all make and getting inspired, as well as asking questions about techniques and other tips for creating beautiful tiling scenes. Thank you so much for watching, and happy stitching.